today, Jackie. Fascinating topic. So I'm sure everybody's going to have all sorts of questions and learnings from it. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you for that introduction. So I am Jackie Kivers. I am CEO and co-founder of Convosphere, which is a social insights agency. And so what we specialize in is conducting research using online data, whether in this case, as the example I'm giving today, of what people post and say, identifying those conversations or posts through social listening, or what they search for in the search data. So we do that in over 70 languages, and I'm based here in London, where our headquarters are. So today's session, I'm going to be taking you through combining search analysis and social listening to provide a 360 view of informational needs. So this could be not just the unmet needs, but the informational needs, educational needs, all of these different needs that patients, caregivers, and potentially HCPs have within different therapeutic areas. If you do have any questions, as has already been mentioned, please do drop them into the Q&A function, and there's time scheduled at the end for me to walk through or answer some of those. So in this presentation and in this workshop, we're first going to go through what social listening and what search insights are, and why and when you might potentially use them. I'm going to share some examples of what this looks like in a finished report, and what insights can be gained out of that and how you can apply those. And then I'm going to take you through how you can do this yourselves, or your company, your agency, your organization can do it themselves. So that'll be in the how section, how we do it. So starting with the what and why, I'm first going to share that for those of you who may be unfamiliar with it, social listening is actually a process. It's the process of using these online conversations where people have posted on forums, blogs, websites, social media like Twitter, and we use that online conversation to answer business questions with actionable insights. So you're looking for not just quantitative metrics, you're looking at the qualitative, and you're using the insights that you generate to answer these business questions. And a deep dive in social conversation analysis can uncover disconnects between the patient or caregiver's expectations, their experience, their knowledge or awareness of the therapy area or the treatment, and uncover needs that they may have that aren't currently being addressed by their healthcare practitioner or by the treatments they're receiving. And I know that pharma companies like to speak about this as unmet needs, but there's no patient really who goes online and says, my unmet needs are, because patients and people don't speak like that. So when we're looking for these conversations or posts that people are having and what an unmet need or a knowledge gap or an information need looks like, is when people are often saying, how come, why don't they, wouldn't it be better if, why can't they? And it's that type of language that you're looking for as an expression of unmet needs. So search analysis, as compared to social listening, where social listening, you're taking what people have said and conducting analysis on that. Search analysis is for those people who aren't speaking, but they're seeking information, right? So they're typing things into Google search. They may be looking for things around a therapeutic area, asking questions about a treatment, really trying to get more information about a topic. And Google makes this information available in different ways. You can get it directly from Google, or there are different tools and platforms that have been created to give you a quantitative or qualitative view of people's, the words, keywords, phrases, and what people search for within a therapeutic area. One of the differences between these two types of data is, obviously, one is kind of not people participating in a conversation, and you can't really tell from the search data whether someone's a patient or caregiver or HCP, whereas in social listening and in those online conversations, you're usually able to identify from the conversation or even the profile or the bio, depending on where the data is coming from, if this person's a patient, caregiver, or HCP. So the search analysis is the process of looking at what people are looking for and the way that they express what they're looking for. Again, you wouldn't have a patient searching in Google saying, my unmet needs within type 2 diabetes, are I need more information, or what are the best treatments? They would say something like, is this injector good, or best injectors, or things like that. But it does give us, so from what people are saying and what people are searching, bring those two together, it can give us a really kind of 360 view on what people are talking about, what they're searching for, what their needs are, and it gives a better perspective on where there are opportunity areas to improve the patient experience, the caregiver experience, and truly become more patient-centric. What does this look like, and how can you use it? So first, we're going to go through the social listening kind of outputs and findings, and then we'll combine that with the search. So in this instance, this is using social listening to look at MS conversations that happened in the US over a 1-year period. So in using social listening, you start with the therapeutic area conversational data sets, you do the analysis, and you deliver the insights. In this case, using the social listening, we're able to identify that some of the key drivers of conversation are the kind of day-to-day struggles of living with MS, the symptoms that people experience, awareness generation, so raising awareness, awareness days, so World MS Day, and fundraising for charities or individual treatment, to a lesser extent, research and clinical trials, etc. So this is important because, symptoms, the living with MS and then the symptoms, are clearly big drivers of conversation. And so you can understand, that these are kind of the driving force of the conversation. And it's possible to deep dive into that, the specific symptoms, the specific challenges of living with MS, and really understand that at greater depth. So some of the lesser topics of conversations are the difficulty in identifying and affording effective medication. So people are struggling with some of their comorbidities, the treatment efficacy, the cost and insurance in the US healthcare system. So understanding these types of things helps reveal opportunities or areas that can be addressed to improve the patient experience. And then through doing the social listening, you're able to kind of go down the long tail and say, well, the majority of conversations are about living with MS. Some of the lesser conversations that are driving kind of the topics and conversations are around, the actual treatments itself, the treatment cost, side effects, efficacy of these treatments. And so they are happening, but they are less of a conversation driver than the symptoms and living with MS. So the social data, the online data set, can also be used to understand the quality of life impacts. So patients are discussing the emotional challenges that living with MS occur on a daily basis. The social impact, what this means for their work, for their lives, the financial impact, and even the physical impact. And all of these are things that really impact their quality of life. And this social listening is done, which we'll go through of how it's done, in both a kind of a qualitative and a quantitative way. So looking at the conversations that are happening and doing the coding and analysis to then generate these kind of findings, and then also size these findings. All of this helps us understand what the key kind of unmet needs are for the MS patients. So it's a lack of awareness and feeling misunderstood and unable to function, or loss of mobility, impacting how they get around, lack of efficacy and or side effects. In the US, healthcare coverage is an issue, and then misdiagnosis and distrust in HCPs. So all of these things, can be kind of illustrated by example verbatims and things like that, but altogether, these are the key drivers of unmet needs. So that's using social listening, where we're using conversational data to really understand the patient experience and to kind of measure the scale of the impact of those things. Search behavior is using the search data, so what people are looking for in Google, to understand what people are trying to find out more information about. So within MS, people were trying to just look at the disease itself. So there's between 100,000 and 1 million average monthly searches on that in the US. And some of the keywords that are often in the search phrase together with MS are also early signs, walking test, and breaking news. So you can see when they're looking at the disease itself, they're thinking, they might potentially have it, what are the potential tests, what are things to look out for, versus when looking or searching for the treatments like Tysabri, Ocrevus, or Lemtrada. There are a significant amount of monthly searches, but you can see that when they're specifically looking for these, Tysabri, they're looking to switch to it or change from it. So there's movement here and questions around, switch behavior and whether it's the right treatment for them, whether it's the best choice. And you can see, especially because this is the US, that cost is a concern. So we've got cost per month, copay card, et cetera. And this is really helpful to understand, not just what people are saying. Yes, they did talk about the costs, and that came through in the social listening, but in the search, we're able to see, it's just as prevalent here as well. The other thing is, I think they call it the 99-1 rule, that 90% of the people are just consuming content, reading things that are online. 9% are commenting, responding to things online, and 1% are creating new content, or writing blog posts, writing forum posts, things like that. So you can see, not everyone who's appearing in these Google searches would have been the people contributing to those conversations that we saw from the social listening analysis, but it does help give us a view of those people who aren't creating content or commenting, what they're looking for and what their needs are as well. So when you look at what people are searching for, you can start to group the types of questions and the phrases and things into specific categories. So you can see that a number of them were under the relation and causality of MS, the impact, again, here on the quality of life, self-assessment, so things that they can do to track their progress with the disease or early warning signs, and support and educational and informational resources. So what came up in this search, the way that people search within MS is they're often looking around questions for their experience, their assessment of, of their disease or its progression, and ways to monitor themselves or, really understand it better. Whereas when they're looking at one of the treatments, so for example, this one, Ocrevus, it's interesting that people are wondering if it can be administered at home. And they have questions about the cost and the insurance, comparing this treatment to other treatments, and the efficacy, side effects, and safety. Right. So that's kind of the output. That's the types of findings or insights that you can generate using social listening or the search analysis. But you may be wondering how to do it. So I'm going to take you through that now. When you're doing this type of work, you can do them independently. You could do just the social listening or just the search. But as you've seen, they do have overlap, and you can really benefit from doing them together. So first, touching on the search analysis, most of this data is coming from Google search. If you're doing a project in the US market, European markets, if you are doing a project in China, the Baidu search, Baidu is the search kind of engine like Google within the Chinese market. They do also make this data available. So it's possible to do this type of search analysis in China or other markets that aren't reliant on Google. So there's over 3.5 billion Google searches every day, and 35% of US adults have gone online to try and find out more information for themselves or loved ones. Increasingly too, people do use different platforms like YouTube to search, but still Google is probably the most prevalent source, and they do make this data available for use. So search analysis alongside social listening, as I mentioned, can uncover informational needs, unmet needs that may not be expressed in the conversations that people are having on blogs, forums, or websites. And they can also give you a better understanding of the way that the patients or caregivers speak or think about their disease or treatment, right? Because they're using their own words versus, again, going back to the difference between unmet needs versus how come, and in the natural language that the patients or the caregivers are thinking and speaking in. So this process starts by doing the data collection. So you get that from the data provider, whether that's Google themselves or another platform. And then you refine it, and then you code it for themes. So you can start grouping it by topic or category, or a particular thing that's specific to the business question that you're trying to answer. Then you can benchmark against the social listening analysis and insights that you've generated. Or if you're not conducting social listening at this time, then you can just finalize your report and share that search data. So you can, for free, use tools like Google Trends, which gives you an idea of how these searches are occurring in different areas over time. And you can even compare some of these searches. And that gives you a good view on things that are increasing or decreasing. Google Ads also gives you a good understanding of the amount of searches per month, the potential advertising costs for using those keywords found in those searches, etc. SEMrush is a paid for tool that is used, that gives you a really good quantitative view of the frequency of these search terms. And Answer the Public, again, is a paid tool, but it gives you a more qualitative view of what people are looking for and seeking. It groups things under categories of the way they've asked a question, kind of how, what, why, where, when, and starts to organize them in that way for you. It can provide some metrics, but it's more powerful in the qualitative kind of view that it's giving you. So using Google Search Trends, you can see where there is interest or rising topics over time, but it does take a little bit of work to draw out the insights and get a better understanding. So for example, this is on MS. And you can see here that people are looking at the biologic treatments, so some that we've already mentioned. And they're also mentioning Selma Blair. So Selma Blair is an actress in the US who is very public in sharing her journey with MS. So she is kind of a very active and prominent figure in speaking about MS, the MS treatments, and her day-to-day kind of quality of life and experiences. And you can also see that events, so time-based things, are here. And you often see an increase of awareness or questions or searches around those awareness days or specific time-based events. So this is a view of Answer the Public. Again, they are drawing this data from Google searches, but as I mentioned, they start to pull it together into these kind of categories of the way that people are asking questions. So they're looking at, they would group together how questions, how multiple sclerosis is diagnosed, how multiple sclerosis affects the body versus can. So can MS be cured? Can it kill you? And so understanding it in those types of categories, you can start to identify kind of topics or themes that people have when they are seeking information. So you can, with all of these different tools, you can export the list of the search data, the keyword phrases that people or search expressions that people have used. And then what we do is so just exporting it in Excel. And then you do a qualitative coding exercise where you start to identify and cluster the topics and themes or categories that these questions fall under, allowing you to then kind of highlight that these topics or themes, so at a high level, and then you can always go back and look at the questions that fall specifically under those topics or categories. Right, so that was the search analysis. There's more tools than even the ones that I mentioned there, and it can be a really powerful way to understand the unmet needs or informational needs, educational needs that patients and caregivers have within a specific therapeutic area. Now we're going into social listening. So this is, again, using the online conversations that people are having, that they're having on forums, blogs, websites, social media, and using those to understand, the way that patients or caregivers are speaking about things to get a better understanding of their needs. So much like a Google search, you start with keyword terms and phrases. So it's called a Boolean query. So it is both inclusive and exclusive. So you start with desk research to start to identify terms around the therapeutic area, and not just the official or the scientific or technical terms of things, but you're also taking a look at patient organizations or patient forums to see the way that patients or the individuals refer to the disease in a more kind of conversational tone or colloquial terms. And you often want to use variations of the term, so misspellings, abbreviations, hashtag versions, and really be as kind of inclusive as possible in all of the different terms for the therapeutic area. And then as it's relevant to your business questions, if it's about the symptoms people are experiencing, you might want to include those. If it's about the treatment, you might want to also include the names of the treatments that are used. So in this case, some of those biologics. However, those biologics are often used on other diseases or therapeutic areas as well. So in that case, like I said, this is both inclusive and exclusive. So you can use a exclusion of exclude RA, rheumatoid arthritis, if those treatments are used in MS as well as RA. So then that would limit it to conversations about your data set would be multiple sclerosis plus these discussions of treatment where someone may have mentioned the treatment, but not the disease, but it excludes any reference to non-relevant diseases, so rheumatoid arthritis or any other exclusions you've put in there. So then you have this data set, you collect the data, and in many cases, what we also do is we further refine this data set by using first person expressions. So in this case, I, me, my, mine, our, we, alongside the therapeutic area. And that weeds out a lot of investor or financial news, press releases, things like that, and really reveals those conversations about individual patients and caregivers who are talking about their experience with that disease area. And then you do further refinement of the data, perhaps by seeking out subsegments of that data set by their kind of experience or their behavior, or by their audience, who they are. Are they a patient, a caregiver, an HCP? And really start to segment the data in those ways. So you generally do not want to just go and start kind of taking data that's out there in the wild, and that violates, the terms and services of these different platforms. There are these social listening tools that exist to help you collect the data and work with it, and in a licensed and compliant manner. These are some of the enterprise tools that are out there: NetBase, Brandwatch, Talkwalker, Pulsar, Social Studio, Meltwater. You may have heard of these. And these kind of bring together conversations or posts that are happening across a wide variety of blogs, websites, forums, Reddit, Mumsnet, as well as publicly available posts from Twitter, and to a lesser extent, Facebook and Instagram. Synthesio is also another good one. All of these are very, very similar. Where they may have differences in is their language handling. All handle quite a few languages, but they may have better access in different markets to the data sets there, or they may handle or process the language or data in different ways. So you don't want to do, as I already mentioned, web scraping. So that's just going and crawling these websites. There's lots of, there are tools and scripts and stuff that make it quite possible to do this, but that generally violates the terms of services of these different sites and platforms. The social listening tools that I already showed you make that data available to you. It's been licensed, it is compliant. So it's much better to use the tools that are set up to do that. And in particular, over the last few years, Facebook and Instagram, their data sets have become less and less available. So what's possible to get from them has really reduced over time. But it doesn't mean just because Facebook and Instagram have limited data that there's no data out there. There's actually quite a significant amount, even on things that you think might be taboo or people don't speak about. It's even with rare diseases, there's generally pretty good data volumes out there, because you're looking at 1 year historical period or 2 years historical period. So the other thing to note is that in addition to the main blogs, forums, websites, social media channels, there is the possibility of also getting data from private forums as well. So as an example, Sermo, which is an HCP only forum, does make its data set available if you're trying to understand what HCPs are saying to each other. Data sets like that are available. So when we collect the data, it goes through this process of kind of cleaning it up, first of all, getting rid of some of the noise, making sure that press releases or investor posts and things like that have been removed, that you have removed all kind of non-relevant data. And then you start to do your coding, the qualitative and the quantitative coding. So we do that manually. So we export the data to Excel. And we are coding each and every post and conversation, going out and looking at it, what came before, what came after, so you really understand the context. And then using the coding process to kind of manually code for who are the stakeholders. Is this a patient, caregiver, HCP? What are they talking about? What stage in the is this at the diagnosis stage? Is this at the treatment phase of the patient journey? Which treatments are being discussed? What are their feelings about them? And it looks something like this. So your coding frame or the attributes that you are categorizing for each and every post would be here along the row. So as you can see, the stakeholder we're looking at is this patient, caregiver, HCP. Can we tell their age? Do we know if they're male or female? What are their impact on the quality of life? What are the unmet needs that are expressed? And a lot of these are going to be defined by your specific business questions. So all of this then is coded. So you could do a 0 or a 1, you could do a yes, no, type things like that. And that allows you to then at the end develop a kind of a score or a quantitative view of how prevalent, is this with men or with women, or use this as a tool to answer then the business questions that you've been posed. So just kind of how you get from the insights, well, from the data to the insights, it's a multi-step process. So you take the social data or the conversational data of the post, you gather that using a social listening tool. You then clean up the data, getting rid of irrelevant or irrelevant posts or content. You export that to a coding tool. So there are tools or platforms that exist. We find, since we are doing these projects that and often over multiple markets with multiple analysts, that Excel works really well for us. So that's what we use. And then from that, from the quantitative and the qualitative kind of coding that you've done, then you kind of gather those and develop your insights and write your insights up and your recommendations and deliver the so what. So you don't want to just deliver a pie chart that doesn't answer the business question. You really need to think through from this kind of qualitative and quantitative perspective of the so what and why that matters and how that relates to the business question that you've been posed. So there's multiple touch points that a team has when doing this analysis, especially when you have multiple analysts. So making sure that people are using the same type of coding schema when they identify an unmet need or things like that. You go through and you share example posts and how would you score or code this one to make sure that everybody's aligned, and have multiple touch points of, hey, I'm finding this really interesting thing in my market. Are you guys seeing this too? And that can help either identify things that are unique to a market or uncover trends or insights that may not have been noticed there before. Right, so putting it all together. So using the social listening, looking at what people are saying and looking at what people are searching for, putting it together, it can give you a really good view of the patient, caregivers, informational needs, educational and unmet needs. You can, as I mentioned, use them separately, but together they can give you a really good view of what's going on and where is there opportunity to improve the patient experience, or when would an intervention, have the most impact. So you can use them to benchmark against each other as well. So as we already shared, what people are searching for can be coded or brought into categories that roll up into these topics or themes. So in the search, we saw that the types of questions that were being asked were about the impact on quality of life, educational and informational sources and symptoms and comparison of symptoms. And then, as you would expect, these were also identified and uncovered when doing the social listening exercise. And you can see, what people search for versus what they talk about, that often more is even uncovered here in the social listening when we are looking at, things like, you can see that treatment and patient support is asked about, but actually when we see what people talk about, treatment often figures a lot less into the conversation than the symptoms conversations. So combining these two can provide you a holistic view of what people are saying, what people are searching, and really what the needs are within this specific therapeutic area. And they help you identify key themes and questions, and deliver more actionable insights or data-driven insights to answer the business questions, right, that you can stand behind. So you're not just interviewing 5 patients, 50 patients, you're looking at what, thousands, tens of thousands of patients, caregivers have said and have searched for. And so you get a really broad view of what's going on, and some idea of the scale of that. So you can also see the misdiagnosis and distrust. It wouldn't have come up as something in the search analysis, but in the conversation through the social listening, you're able to identify that this is an area of concern for the patients that they are talking about and sharing with each other, but it doesn't come through clearly when you're looking at just the search analysis. So you can see that each are strong ways to develop insights, but they're stronger together. And the search can also be driven by people's frustration with undiagnosed kind of symptoms or side effects that they may be having from their treatments, or improving their own understanding. And they may give you a better view of some of those versus, and those are, people asking questions from their phone, or the point in time when they have the question, whether they've logged into their computer, they're doing it from their phone, they're asking Siri. Whereas the conversational data, someone's needed to sit down, think something through, and take the time to respond or have a discussion in a website or forum. Right, so that takes me through the end. I hope you are able to now feel comfortable using social and listening and search analysis together. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Fantastic, Jackie. Thank you so much. It's a fantastic presentation, and lots of interaction that has been coming through and questions for people. So we will dive straight in, and I'll start at the top, and then after that, I think there's a couple of kind of themes that seem to have come out. But we had a question from Glyn, just asking around how you would go about sort of triangulating your sample for bias. So if people are kind of asking questions or searching for things, are those people inherently more likely to be those who are kind of having problems, who have unmet needs? What if the majority of that patient population is sort of feeling fine with their disease and isn't asking those questions? How do you account for that kind of bias within the sample?
So you can start to identify different patient types or segments, so patient profiles. So you can start to identify kind of expert patients, the really informed, who are advising others of the types of treatments, or people even point to them to say, go ask username, whatever this question, because they really know what they're talking about. And they are sharing information at a level that is very clear that they understand what's going on, versus other patients who are maybe new to it and have a lot of questions. So you can start to segment these based on kind of the types of questions they're asking, the types of content they're posting, their level of education or awareness. In terms of bias or representativeness, you could say something like, oh, well, Alzheimer's patients or Parkinson's patients, aren't necessarily going to go blog about their experience. And for the most part, that's right. However, their adult caregivers are, their grandchildren are, there are people around them who are documenting, I took my partner to the neurologist, and these are, this is the interaction we had with the HCP, and these are our questions, and this is the new treatment we were prescribed. So even if that individual isn't documenting or having a conversation or asking questions about their treatment, their caregivers, their family members, their loved ones, there are people who are contributing to this conversation. So the data is out there and real. And then, even with things like rare diseases, the content is there, because you're not looking at the one or two people in that country to do an interview with them who have that. You can look farther, or you can look over longer periods of time.
Fantastic, thank you. And actually that leads nicely into sort of a couple of the other sort of questions that were around the potential sizes of some of these data samples.
Yeah.
And how do you go about kind of limiting those? And then when you're starting to get into individually coding, obviously not something, I think somebody mentioned, sifting through sort of 3 billion posts or something like that is time consuming. So yeah. How do you tend to kind of go about and approach the size of samples, and then how much time do you tend to allow for the projects?
So our average project length is about 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes 5, depends on how many countries we're doing at the same time or how complex the business questions are, because that needs multiple rounds of analysis. But average project, I would say, is a month. Take a topic like type 2 diabetes, right? It's a very prevalent disease. It's discussed a lot. It's like 8 million posts per year in the US alone, and growing. So you could take that 8 million posts, but that's not going to really help you answer your business questions. So you can first refine the query so it's aligned with your business question. So maybe your business question is, what are the unmet needs of type 2 diabetes patients in the first 6 months of diagnosis? So you can set your query so that, first of all, you are looking for type 2 diabetes. You can exclude anything that comes up with type 1 diabetes. Then you're looking for patient experience. So you're looking again at those first person things, I, me, my, mine. Again, that's kind of further shrinking your data set. Then you're looking at conversations that are specifically within the first kind of 6 months. So you can put in words there that are like just diagnosed, early, newly diagnosed, things like that could help limit it. But then you've got this data set that you've refined, and then you can either take the whole thing, but there are costs associated with the volume of data that you're pulling through some of these tools, or you can take a sample of that. So you could say, give me a random 10% sample of all of these posts. And then when you do your manual coding, so how we do it is we use a statistically relevant sample size. So we use there's calculators that help you do that. And you take that and you do the manual coding of that sub segment. So of the 8 million, we may have exported 8,000 posts. And of that, we are manually coding, 2,000 posts, something like this. And so not only does that, for the most part, answer the business questions and gives you this this coded sample that you can kind of stand behind, that you have looked at in depth, and you can extrapolate that number out to the broader data set. But there's also the law of diminishing returns. So after you've read 2,000 posts and coded them and read what was before them and what was after them in a forum or conversation. At that point, 2,000 in, 3,000 in, there's not really much that's new that people are talking about. Or if it is, it's one person and they're an outlier and they're not really representative of the overall patient or caregiver experience. So that's how we do it. And that's, I hope that helps. And I'm happy to further expand on that if that's not fully answered.
You talked when we were talking earlier in the week with the kind of the coding matrix that you had, that once you kind of get into the rhythm, you found that there was sort of X amount that you were able to get through on an hourly basis.
Yes.
And then that sort of really helps inform how much time you're putting aside. Can you sort of,
so
on too complicated projects, how many kind of posts you tend to get through?
So it depends on two things: the data source that you're using, Twitter, versus mixed sources like forums, blogs, websites, which can have numbers of paragraphs per post, versus a tweet, is a sentence or two. So if you're using Twitter only data, you can obviously get through maybe 300 to 500 posts per day as an individual analyst. But if you're using mixed data sources, so it's pulling in blogs, forums, websites, Twitter, and other things, and you're using a coding frame, the coding frame that I showed in the talk, you could probably get through maybe 20 an hour. These mixed data sources. But if it's more complex business questions, so you're trying to understand switching behavior, adherence, the emotional kind of journey that patients are going through, you're having to kind of get more insight out of each and every post and answer all these questions. And then maybe you're looking at 10 to 15 an hour. So it gives you an idea of if your N size, representative sample is 200 or 2,000, that's the difference between days and weeks.
Yeah, makes the sort of the entire project length quite different. And
yes,
I assume as well, do you tend to kind of marry that up around client timelines and the particular sort of uses that the outputs are going to be used for?
Yeah, so it's really important to understand in the organization, who are the stakeholders? So who's going to be using this information? How are they going to be using it? Is it informing their communication plan or a product launch, or is this around a specific campaign? So are there deadlines? Who's using this information lets you know kind of what format to send it back in. So if it's going to the leadership team because they want a bird's eye view, you may send it back as an infographic. If it's going to the in-market teams, you may have a separate report for France, for Germany, for Italy. If it is going to the global or regional team, then it may be one report that has correlations across all these markets and identifying outliers in these different markets, PowerPoint. Or if it's, say, their medical comms or even corporate affairs, then it may be you're doing social listening to understand what's driving their trackers. So their trackers are going up and down, but trackers don't tell you why they're going up and down and who's doing the talking and is this important and should we care? But social listening could be done on a weekly or monthly basis alongside those trackers, and kind of giving the so what.
Yeah. Actually, I think you almost sort of blended into answering another couple of questions that have come up there, which is fantastic. Very well done. Somebody has asked, would you recommend market awareness tracking around a product launch, or do you tend to find the data volumes are too large at that point, even when they are kind of filtered down?
No, I would definitely recommend it. So understanding, and especially if you know that market launch is happening, so doing listening before to understand what are the current kind of unmet needs, but also what are the potential competitors and how that's going to launch into the market. So if people already don't have a need for that, or there are needs that it could address, you could better position the launch of it. And then understanding the impact that it's having on the market, not just from your paid campaigns that you may have, or awareness campaigns, things like that, but the organic reach, the impact that it's having, the perceptions that it's having, can be really valuable as well. The other thing to mention is you're often looking at a therapeutic area level. So you're looking at MS, or you're looking at treatments with MS, or you could look at a category or class of treatments. So biologics versus orals or injections, because people don't use the name of the product as much as pharma companies would like to think they do. And so you're more likely to have someone say, oh, I took my insulin, but they don't say what it is, or they'll talk about an injector or a type of insulin when it's been prescribed, or if they're having problems with it. And so it is important to understand that, when do people use the brand names and what do they say, but you also need to look at the category, class, or broader therapeutic area.
There's a couple of questions around the sort of the theme of where this is sort of qualitative information, and the sort of the amount of hands-on that you've got with the data to really be able to yourself personally code it. What's your sort of take or your feelings around more sort of automated ways of dealing with that qualitative information? Is it any good? Do you feel like you get the same kind of depth of insight as actually manually handling the data?
Absolutely not.
So it's an opening question. I like it.
But yeah, and that's why we do it the way we do it. But so there are tools that say they can do this off the shelf, right? Even all the social listening tools say that they can do the analysis. The problem is they're using, so for sentiment, right? They're using the same positive, negative, neutral sentiment for automotive industry, fashion, as well as pharma and healthcare. And when someone says, this watch is the bomb, versus, this is sick, and the way that people speak, and it is different in different types of conversations. Where, when a patient may be talking about their condition or how they feel, like it's different than you talk about consumer products. So like, for example, it may score everything as negative and neutral in cancer, breast cancer conversations at a kind of an automated level. But when you're doing it manually, you can see actually, there's positive sentiment here because they've had a successful treatment. It was a long struggle and they've documented their journey, but they're really hopeful and they're really happy. And so it's not, there's a lot that actually sits behind these, and the tools are really blunt tools that are applied to multiple industries. And so with that, it's very difficult to gain insight. But if you are doing this type of analysis, say, this is you are running this month over month over month for breast cancer or something. Once you do that first manual analysis, you can then use what you've learned to set up sub-queries or to do some automated analysis that kind of ticks along at a monthly level. You may need to do some tweaking, but instead of being 75% manual, 25% tool, you're able to flip it where it's 75% of the automated still needs 25% human time to go in to make sense of it, because those automated tools will just give you the topics, the themes, and the sizing of those. They don't tell you the so what and what should you do differently in your business and how does this impact this patient population, and how should you change what you're doing. And that's, you still need that human element. But yes, you can use automated, but I wouldn't do it, first off.
sort of like human inspiration machine learning in a way, isn't it? It's,
well, yeah. I mean, you just need to set it up, and you need to do it at a like a therapeutic area level and a market level, because the way that people, you can't just take something and have it work across multiple markets. So in the US, to die is to kick the bucket, but in Slovenia, it's to he went to whisper to crabs, and in markets like Germany, it's to give your spoon away. So if you just used Google Translate to translate for you know, die or kick the bucket, you're not going to find anything in these other markets.
Fantastic. I'm going to squeeze in one very last quick question, and that's around some of the sort of the media. Have you ever used videos or images?
Yes.
These types of analyses?
Yes, so absolutely. So there are great tools that can identify logos, can identify things in the background, whether people are at the beach. It can look at the hashtags that are used in the conversation, or posts or comments that are associated with things. So you can do this with photos on Instagram. You can do it public ones. You can't just go into someone's private account. YouTube, things like that. There are tools out there that help do this at an automated level, and you can also manually do it. So yeah, absolutely. And I, you know, there's new developments coming out in that all the time.
Fantastic. I think it's sort of, it goes without saying. I know there was a final question that's touched on things like GDPR and privacy. I think we've talked about using the kind of the licensed is a sort of a big must do around these types of issues, because you know then that you are using data and information that you are legally allowed to do.
Yeah, and these social listening tools also have to comply with, once people delete a tweet, they go back into their, you know, their databases and delete those tweets, or Google's right to be forgotten. If someone's done that, they are the ones who are responsible for doing that, and they're the ones who are responsible for the kind of legal collection of this, and the you know, all of that. You don't want to just take this data from people. Yeah, you need to be careful.
Yes, and you're not about to start going and manually just stalking people on Facebook and right. Jackie, I'm gonna call us through to a close there. I know there were more questions coming through, lots of comments, people saying that they found it really, really interesting. Obviously, if there are items that you would like to sort of go back and recap on when we send the delegate feedback survey, if you fill that in for us, you will of course be able to request a copy of Jackie's slides. So it's absolutely sort of wonderful takeaway pieces of information there. Jackie, thank you very, very much for your time today and your knowledge.
Pleasure.
It's been really well received, hugely educational for all of us, and we look forward to having you back again at some point. I think it would be fantastic. We can carry on the discussion.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm going to call the webinar to a close this afternoon, so feel free to start leaving if you would like